Good evening and welcome to the Norfolk Select Board meeting on January. Oh, I don't know the date. February. We're into February somehow. It's February 1st, 2022. I'm Anita Mecklenburg. I'm acting chair as CC has another engagement. We're going to miss her sparkle, but we're going to stumble forward without her leadership. And we are on Zoom because the state law allows us to be on Zoom while we're in a pandemic. So if you want to hear the official lingo, you can see all the other meetings, but state law allows us to be on Zoom right now because it's not safe for us to gather. So thank you for being here and welcome. And Kevin, do you want to lead us? We'll start into, well, Blythe, do you want to go through the day, go through the meeting before we do that?
Sure. So just a friendly reminder, you should do a roll call vote of who's here, and all votes are roll call tonight. So if you want to do that first, and then I'll run through the agenda real quick.
Excellent. And what are we voting on opening the meeting?
Just roll call that you're both here.
Okay, so roll call vote. Anita Mecklenburg here.
Kevin Calca here.
Thank you,
Good.
Blythe.
You're welcome. So on the agenda tonight, we have the public hearing for the FY23 proposed Water Enterprise Fund rates, followed by public comment. The action item is to consider dissolving the 150th anniversary committee. The discussion item is to discuss the ARPA or ARPA final rule and use of funds, town administrator updates, including COVID, approval of 4 warrants and approval of 1 set of minutes.
Thank you. So we will start by going into public hearing. Do you want me to read that, Kevin, or would you like to read it?
I got it right here if you'd like me to do it, Anita.
Awesome.
The Select Board Licensing Board for the Town of Norfolk will conduct a public hearing under the provisions of Chapter 101 of the Acts of 2004, Section 7, to determine the water budget for FY23 and set prices and rates for usage of the water system. This hearing will be conducted on Tuesday, February 1st, 2022 at 7 p.m. in Room 124, Town Hall, 1 Liberty Lane, Norfolk, Mass. 02056.
Just a point that when we physically sent this advertisement to the newspaper, we were still meeting in person. So, I mean, I think it's quite reasonable to meet by Zoom instead. I just wanted to point out that the reason it's a little different tonight is the COVID pandemic caused us to go back to remote. Otherwise, we would have scripted the public hearing that way.
Thank you. So do you want to start, Blythe?
Sure. So as we do every year at this time, in accordance with our bylaws, we need to hold a public hearing to take input on the proposed rates for the next fiscal year. And we need to start and conclude that process by the end of February because our bylaws require that people have 120 days notice of the rate change before it would go into effect in the next fiscal year. So joining us tonight are Blair Crane, our DPW director, and Barry Revere, our assistant DPW director, who together with a little bit of support, but not much from Todd and I, have put together a presentation to recommend to you a very modest, we think it's very modest change in rates for next fiscal year. So that we can basically continue to meet the costs of running the water enterprise for the next fiscal year, but certainly with an eye towards being as thoughtful about a rate increase as we can to our water rate users. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Blair and to Barry to give that presentation and share their screen to do that, and then take any input that you guys have or anyone who has joined the meeting who might like to comment. The reason we suggested that the meeting be continued until the February 15th meeting is simply because that way we expect that all 3 board members will be available, and any resident who sees the meeting tonight or watches it before then could come back and comment then as well before the board makes its final decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Blair?
I think that probably the best way to do it would be to have Barry start out with the the presentation itself, and then I certainly have some comments at the end that I'd like to make if that's agreeable.
Sounds great.
Excellent. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
I finally perfected after 3 presentations in the last 3 weeks. I've got all the kinks out. We know what works and what doesn't work. So thank you for having us tonight. So we're going to present to you our proposed water rates. We're going to be looking at our basically a brief rate overview, what we're presenting for the 23 rates, our overview of our budget and revenue status, a little snapshot of where we are with the water price budget, and we'll take you right into it. So several years back now, I remember when we first started this, the water rates hadn't been raised in 5 or 6 years. In FY20, it was a pretty substantial rate increase, and we implemented quarterly billing. The town was biannual, and we moved to a quarterly billing process. And FY21, the rates were decreased from 20 to 5%. We also added in 20 the capital improvement fee, which the town didn't have before. The intent was to help pay down the Holbrook Street well project. So over the last couple of years, we had the 5% increase with a decrease in the capital fee. For FY23, we're proposing a 2% increase for only tiers 3 and 4. So it's not a rate increase across all 4 tiers. And we're decreasing our capital fee by 4 cents to $1.34 per 1,000 gallons. What the numbers look like. So we have a tier billing system in town. So your bills are based on the gallons you used. So we're adding 2% to the top 2 tiers, tier 3 and tier 4, which is shown here. So it goes from $11.82 per gallon to $12.06. $17.09 to $17.43, and we're not touching the lower 2 tiers. And we're also, you can see here, we're reducing the capital fee from $138 to $134. What does this look like to the average user? So this is based on Mass DEP standards of 65 gallons per day per person. So the average 2-person household, roughly, is going to go down from 555 to 553. 4-person household, 1095 to 1097, and a 4-person household with irrigation is going to go up from 3026 to 3059. Part of the intent with these rates are, we still have a lot of high users in town, so we want to promote conservation and conserving Norfolk's resources of water. What it looks like for our budget and our overall revenue. So you can see here our FY22 water enterprise budget was $1.8 million. To date, with expenses and debt, we're at $939,000. Total water revenue to date is $106.8. So our balance is $874. As you can see, since 20 and 21, we picked up some substantial money in our revenues, and our balances are good. Our 2022 water billing or commitment right now is $1.919 million. First quarter, we brought in $501,000. Second quarter was $531,000. Third quarter was $443,000. And fourth quarter, we're projecting that right now to be right around $443,000 for a current year-to-date billing of $1 million. So one of the huge drivers behind raising the water rates originally was to bolster our retained earnings. The goal, which we are currently on target to meet, is having about $1.8 million in reserve funds. This allows us, working capital when our expenses exceed available cash. If we have any revenue shortfalls, if we need any emergency expenditures, and we've had some new regulatory requirements come up where we have this money in our coffers that we could use towards those type of things. So some of the things we're looking at for the water enterprise budget, it's important to maintain a level of funding, excuse me, to be used for capital projects. Some of the things we've been looking at: water main looping projects, water rate study, water master plan update, a hydrant flushing program update, transite pipe replacement program, overall system upgrades, system expansion, and the continued exploring of new sources. Even though we have Holbrook Street well coming online soon, we still need to look into the future and make sure we have water there for us to use. These are some preliminary budget numbers that we've been pulling together. So we have a cost in here for a new water rate study. So what we're looking to do is, excuse me, make these rates, proposed rates this evening. Sometime this summer, bring in Doug Gardner, who helped us with our rate study last time, bring him to reassess what we need to do and how we need to move in the future with our rates. We need to do a hydrant flushing program. So as most people know, we flush our hydrants, our water line, twice a year. With a new well coming online, we kind of need to look at how we do it and possibly reconfigure our flushing program. One of the objectives that we're looking at is updating our water master plan. It's been quite a few years since the water master plan is updated. This would give us a guide moving forward to see what we need to do for water resources overall in Norfolk. Another thing we're looking at is new source development. We have a couple potential opportunities. The money spent here would allow us to explore those opportunities, and again to have that extra water ready for us to use when it's needed. Water meter and software upgrades. It probably seems like yesterday to most people that we upgraded our water meters. It's been 10, 11 years now. So that's something that we're going to need to look at in the future, is updating our water meter system. Recently, we've been busy putting together potential water main projects. A lot of this was the ARPA funds coming down the pipe. We wanted to be able to have projects ready that we could look at. But also it was a long time coming to get a list of major water projects that could go into a master plan to give us some focus for the future. The big number for all this wonderful information I presented you is right around 35 million. So a little update on the Holbrook Street well. Everything, the well was permitted in 2019. Everything to date has been completed. We're just getting ready to get the thing online, probably early February. We've had a couple setbacks with COVID and supply issues and other things. We're just waiting for DEP to come on down, take a look at the well and give us the go ahead to fire it up. Some of the regulatory compliance things that we've been dealing with, I wanted to give you an update on, is our Pfas regulations and sampling compliance. That's ongoing and we're looking in good shape there. Lead and copper sampling compliance. Again, it's an ongoing sampling procedure we have to do and we're good shape there. We completed our risk and resiliency assessment and we've updated our emergency response plan. So all of those things have been done recently. Also wanted to give you a quick snapshot of what water usage looks like at the town of Norfolk. We implemented the rates in 2020, and you can see it dropped a little bit in 21. A lot of the water use fluctuates based on environment and climate factors. So one of the interesting things here is our high water users are still our high water users. So they're using a large amount of water and they're paying large rates. Our goal was conservation, which we're getting because we're actually going down in our usage. I like to see how it's going to trend for this year, but in 2022, it's tough to say because we're only at 7 million gallons compared to 136 million gallons at this point in the year. So that concludes our presentation. Blair and I will definitely open up to questions now. Any comments that anybody has, we'll gladly answer.
Claire, did you want to say anything
Yes,
before we ask questions?
Absolutely. I just wanted to reiterate a lot of the things that Barry said in that, when we took a look at this overall, obviously we are making an effort to conserve water, which is a very valuable resource in the town of Norfolk. But at the same time, As Barry did say earlier, that the high water users are still using a vast amount of water, and obviously that has an impact on the system as a whole. Hopefully, in the future, that with a rate study again next year, that we'll be able to have a little more foresight in the coming years. But I think overall, I think at this point, I think the water system is in pretty good shape. Thank you.
Kevin, do you have questions?
Yes, thank you. The first one I had was related to the users. So we have 4 tiers of usage for the FY23 proposed rates. We're only increasing the rates on the top 2. Do you happen to have a breakdown of the percentage of users per tier here in town?
Yeah, we do have that. The interesting thing, it's not apples to apples type of equations. So I dug into this thing for a little while, and Blair was kind of giving me the business because I actually quit. I couldn't find the answer. Typically, I strive to find the answer. I'm going to work with Christine on this one. This is one of the ones that's escaping me. So I'll definitely dig into it and get you that answer.
Appreciated, but overall, I'm sorry, go ahead, Anita.
No, go ahead.
It seems that the majority of the people fall within the high end of tier 2 and the middle range of tier 3, just from some of the preliminary numbers I get looked at. We don't have a large percent of there are users that are over to 25,000. There is, let's say, an elite section that are well over that amount. So I mean, yeah, that's about how it shapes up.
And another piece of that, Kevin, also is that someone may be in tier 4 in quarter 2 and quarter 3 and be in tier 2 in quarters 1 and 4, just depending on the time of the year, if they have irrigation or what happens to be going on. COVID obviously had an impact to that last year, but it does seem that, it does fluctuate from one quarter to the other, depending on environmental factors.
And just to piggyback on Kevin's question, and then I'll put it back to you, Kevin. The high users, are those mostly residential, or is it more commercial, or a mix of both?
The high users, you'd be surprised, are actually residential. We have some commercial users in there. The horse and carriage, Eagle Brook Saloon, the nursery on the Riverside. I can't remember the name of the nursery on 1A. We typically see them. We expect to see them on the high end. But we have about, I'd say, 25, 30 residential, extremely high users.
Thank you. Kevin?
So I think more of what I was getting, I wasn't looking for the precise breakdown. I appreciate the dedication to be able to deliver that. But more of what I was getting at was that the majority of users here in town fall into the unaffected tiers of what's being proposed today. But yeah, it sounds like what you're saying. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
The water master plan. I've heard of a wastewater master plan. I have not heard of a general water master plan. When was the last time that was updated?
The best I could find, it was probably 2010. So that document kind of set forth the availability of water in town. That document is still used a lot when they were looking at the 40B development. So that study was done to project, roughly how many buildings could be built in town that, Norfolk could still satisfy with water. I think it's something important we need to look at in the near future.
If I could add on to that, as we see the development growing and we talk about things like Southwood Hospital, I know that you all understand that the Holbrook Wells field is a redundant source. It's meant to give the other 2 wells some relief and downtime, and so that they can recharge. It's not meant to be able to address future growth. And so updating the master plan will be really important to help us decide, where to prioritize projects. And in doing so, we're also looking very closely at the ARPA funds and the infrastructure bills from the federal government. We've got to make some key decisions about what's the best way to deploy those. And we will, I'm sure, spend some ARPA funds on water. But the same token, the total here of 35 million is something that on some part, the users are going to need to bear, and we want to do the next rates study and do that master plan so we can be really thoughtful about what the rates need to be to take care of ensuring Norfolk's needs are met, but not more than we need to. So that's, next steps for the future.
Thanks, Blake. Since you had answered my questions related to the plan for the new study next year and for an update on the Holbrook well, I just have one more question for you. With remembering in FY20 the plan that was set forth and the kind of bumpy road that we went through to be able to get that implemented. If you look at the yearly water use graph you have on your last slide, you highlight in 2020 that usage goes up. How much of that do we attribute to quarantine and pandemic as opposed to trends that we saw with usage?
Yeah, I think 2020 is a little bit of both. More people were home using more water. We also had a hotter summer. There was a lot of swimming pools being filled. There was irrigation. As much as we try to discourage people from doing that, it still happens. Mm-hmm. And I think too is we started tracking numbers a little bit tighter and closer than we had in 2018 and 2019. So the 2020 numbers are a bit more realistic than 18 and 19.
Got it.
Also, something to note is that we also did see an increase in the amount of trash at the transfer station in 2020, which you may correlate to the same figure.
Absolutely. That is all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you. I had a question about, I was just sort of wanting to put on the hat of a taxpayer. And so if I'm a taxpayer, well, I am a taxpayer, so it's not if I am a taxpayer, but as a taxpayer, if I look at you right now, have a surplus of $874,000, it might be hard to swallow an increase in the water fees. But I also see that you have the water retained earnings with an attention. And I just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about how the water retained earnings is actually going to take the burden off of taxpayers.
So Anita, if I can clarify real quick on that $874,000 number that you're looking at.
Thank you, sir.
That's the budget amount available. So we budgeted $1,813,000. We've spent to date $939,000. We have $874,000 available for us to spend throughout the year. If we choose not to spend that will get run over and put into retained earnings. And as you can see on the billing, where it's listed out for the 4 quarters, that's approaching almost $2 million. So we're exceeding what we anticipated for billing, which is another positive. So that's monies that are going to be going into the retained earnings. And if you go back to the schedule where you're looking at the rates for tier 1, tier 2, they're not increasing. And all the other items, service charge, all the other items, they're staying flat. So there's no increase there. So relatively speaking, the typical homeowner is probably going to see either a flat, if maybe less, if they keep the same usage. Again, because the capital fee is also going down this year as well. So that's going to help with the overall billing on a going forward basis. The water rate study, I know that when we talked with Doug Gardner, the idea here was to get us our retained earnings up close to $2 million, which is what we're approaching. We're not there yet. I know that we do need to probably have a little bit more room to make it there. I anticipate us to probably get there or maybe exceed based on what I'm seeing here as far as numbers and what the expectation is for the remainder of the year. So we're on track with the study that was done. Again, we're going to be doing a study next year, looking forward. This kind of leap year in between kind of just puts us through without really any major hiccups and keeps us on target, I believe.
Yes, go ahead, Blythe.
If I could add, so that was an excellent overview by Todd. I would also add to that a water enterprise can only spend its own money for whatever issue comes up. And so if we suddenly had a bad Pfas results, or we had a major water main break or something happened to a tank, this is our savings account to pay for those. And so part of the reason to get it up is to make sure that if something happened, that we could had the finances to address it rather than all taxpayers, because not all taxpayers or water users. But also having it at a healthy level helps us be in better preparation to deal with additional debt in the future, because we could use, a modest amount of this to help keep the rates stable. And the goal is to avoid what happened in 2020 and, make sure that the impact to users is as minimal as possible and still be ready to do all the things we need to do as a water system.
Thank
And
you.
we did also have a Zoom call. Barry and I did talk to Doug Garner, knowing that this was kind of an in-between year between the study that had been done previously and the one that we hope to do in the future. We did have a Zoom call with him, and his sentiment was that this was a continuation of the correct track that we have been on, and thought that these recommendations were good.
Thank you very much. And kind of unrelated to the presentation, did we ever determine whether the Holbrook well is a different aquifer from the other wells, or is it all the same aquifer?
Oh, I don't know the answer to that one, guys.
That's not my purview.
So the Holbrook Street well is in the Charles River watershed. The Gold Street well is in proximity to Charles River watershed. And the Spruce Road well is a little bit of the Charles River and a little bit of the 10 Mile River.
10 Mile.
Yes.
Thank you. That's all I have. And now, Blythe, we open it up to the public for questions.
Yes, please.
So if you are out there in the public and you have a question you would like to ask these fine people who have done this work for our town, please raise your hand, use the raise your hand feature, or what did Kevin used to say? Wave your hand furiously in front of the screen and we'll call on me. Amanda, do you see anybody?
No, not at this time.
And so not seeing anybody, we are.
No, I do. We have Donna.
Donna. Hello, Donna.
Hello. I thought I clicked raised and it needed a second time. Donna Jones, North Street. Where does a family of 6 or 8 fall into the usage category?
A family
Yeah.
of 6 or 8. That really depends. How much water they use. They could be 6 or 8 and really conservative, 6 or 8 and use a lot of water. I think they're probably in the high end of tier 3, teetering into the tier 4.
So what I think he's saying, Donna, is they don't calculate it by family size, but by how much water you're using in a family.
Right. So the sample that says family of 2, this is, tier 1 or tier 2, this is how much it's going to go up.
I think they're just guessing.
Might confuse somebody that's, well, what about me?
I mean,
And
Donna, if I was to extrapolate the numbers out, 2-person household being 555, 4-person household being 195, add those two numbers, and you're looking at about 1,600 and change. And that's all dependent on if they just use standard water in the house, if they have irrigation, if they have a pool, if they utilize, more at-home activities, things of that sort, that could go up. But based on the averages, that's what you're looking at, about 1,650.
Thank you.
Donna, I've always
Yeah.
thought that 65 gallons per day was high per person. I think I would be hard pressed to think that I use 65 gallons a day when you know what a 55-gallon drum of liquid looks like. So
True.
it is a very subjective number for sure.
Thank you.
And thank you, Todd. Anybody else?
No, not at this time.
So like Blythe said, we're going to pause the public hearing. We'll reopen it again at our next meeting in case people watch this and want to come back and ask any questions at that time. I think that's a nice model. Thank you, Blythe, for doing that for folks. And do we need a motion to end or
Continue the
To
public
continue.
hearing.
to continue?
All right, I move that the board vote to continue the public hearing for the FY23 water rates to the February 15th, 2022 meeting.
And I think I need to second that.
Yep.
And then a roll call vote. Anita
Correct.
Mecklenburg, aye.
Kevin Calcutt, aye.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for all that work. There's a lot of work there, and it's an important resource for our town. So thank you very much. The next section of the agenda is public comment. I'm going to ask for Amanda's help with the 3-minute timer thing. My multitasking isn't as strong as Cece's. And so if anybody out there has any comments that they'd like to share with us, please state your name, address, and we'd be happy to hear it. Donna.
Hello, Donna Jones, North Street. I just wondered about the effect of the library sprinkler system leak on the town budget. This is the second time the library's had a leak over several years, and wondered if there's money available to fix it and have it not leak in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Blythe, we're still in the 3 minutes. Do you want to respond to that, or should we get back to Donna later?
I think we can respond in part, but probably a more thorough answer can come a little later. I spoke with Facilities Director Matt Hafner about it yesterday. This is right now going to be a combination of both the town's resources and an insurance claim. The insurance claim will probably cover the fire watch that we've had with the fire department personnel on staff on site when the library's been open to make sure it's safe, as well as like the restoration of the front lobby when we're ready to do that. What will probably need to be dealt with town funds is the actual addressing. There's a number of locations, I want to say there's 13 in the building, where there are low points in the dry sprinkler system that actually have gotten water in them. I'm sorry, I'm not going to do as good a job as Matt can explaining how that actually happens. But because they're in uninsulated areas above the ceiling, the way the library was designed, they've actually had the opportunity, unfortunately, to freeze. And that's, you saw what caused that in the front lobby. Those are, it's a bit of a conundrum over whether those will all or in part be covered by insurance. Because insurance pays to fix something and not to make it better. Part of the problem is we do need to make it a little better so it doesn't keep happening. So we are going to utilize the town's, the unintended, the funds within the facilities budget that are for unforeseen situations that come up. This is certainly an example of that, as well as working through with the insurance company what's reasonable for them to pay. So I think it will be a combination of the two. I think we're going to be okay with the facilities budget right now, but we may need to adjust that in the spring. And I would ask Todd if he has any other thoughts, because I know he and Matt talk a lot about these things. He may have more information than I do. Todd, anything to add?
Nope, no additional ask for money at the moment. Again, utilizing insurance reimbursement. Like Blythe had indicated that they're only going to reimburse us for the system that was in place, not to make it better. So the items that we're making better are coming out of the major expense line for facilities, and we're all set for that for right now.
Unfortunately, we just don't have a timeline for exactly when it's all going to get done, because part of it is getting folks who are available to come do the work. And so it's going to take a little longer. And I know that's really impacted people's use of the library. We're certainly sorry about that.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you,
Thank
Blythe.
you, everyone.
Anybody else have public comment for us at this time?
There aren't any coming through.
There are none coming through. And so with that being said, thank you. And we'll move on to number 3. Please consider dissolving the 150th anniversary committee. Blythe?
Yes, in your packet is an email thread from the committee through the town clerk, Carol Green, letting us know that they have wrapped up their work. They've had their final meeting, and they would think it's appropriate to have the board who set them up to formally vote to dissolve the committee. So that's what we recommend, and there's an item in your motions for you to consider for that.
You're sure they don't want to just roll over and start working on the 200th?
Well, I see Donna's still on the call and she's on the committee, so I'll let you ask her that. That's a big ask.
I'm just teasing. Kevin, do you have any questions?
No, I was actually going to suggest the same thing. We only have 23 years left until the 175 planning starts. So I don't know if maybe we want to get a jump on that now or whatnot. But in all seriousness, that event that was put together for that celebration was completely out of this world. And I think it was such a service to this community to be able to have something like that during that time, coming out of the first stage of the pandemic. It was really just incredible to watch and to be a part of. So I don't know if it's really understood how impactful that was to so many people here in town, but I do hope that everybody on the committee knows what a big part they played in that and how appreciative we are for everything they did.
And I have to second that. I really think that it was an amazing community event. It was one of those times where you just really remember how much you love this town and how awesome it is to have everybody come together. And so I thank everybody for their service. Maybe Blythe, we can formally thank them as we disband the committee, send them a letter of thanks from our town. So Kevin?
Okay.
I move that the board vote to disband the 150th anniversary parade committee and thank them for their contributions to the town.
Second, and then a roll call vote. Anita Mecklenburg, aye.
Kevin Calcutt, aye.
Thank you. And thank you, Donna. Please discuss, number 4 is please discuss the ARPA final rule and uses of the funds. Blythe, do you want to start us off?
I do, and I know I will look to Todd for some support on this. So since the ARPA funds were approved by federal government, they came out with interim rules, which we all spent lots of time going to webinars and learning all about. And that was helpful and there was a lot of comments went back to them, and they used those to generate the final rule, which just came out late last month. So we're in our new round of webinars learning all about that. And the good news is they have changed the rules, and in some cases it has been simplified for communities such as us. So we wanted to give you just a kind of a quick overview about that and tell you that we're rethinking our plan, because now that we can spend it in different ways than we could before, we need to spend some more time working on that, and we will. But basically, as you know, we were supposed to receive we are receiving about $1.2 million directly. And then the other, the balance of the money that Norfolk would be due based on how it's disseminated is going to the county. And they're getting 137 million, of which we were to receive about 2.5. So one of the big changes with this final rule is they always were considering allowing entities to figure out what their losses were during COVID. A good example would be a tourist destination with lots of hotels and things that had to shut down and impacting a government's revenue stream. Not so much the case for us. That's not what Norfolk is. And in the change, they said, we're going to allow any entity that receives the funds to make an automatic assumption that they could have lost up to $10 million. And whether they lost it or they didn't. And with that change, we're going to allow that up to $10 million be allowed to be used for a wide range of government services that community would have provided. In our case, we didn't lose anywhere near $10 million, and we're only getting directly $1.2 million. So the short answer is that up to the money we're receiving directly, we have a fair amount of latitude how we're going to spend it. The county, on the other hand, is different. They have 28 communities. 3 of them are not really eligible to use this math because of their metrics. So that leaves 25. And so the debate has been, well, how do you, if that county also as an entity receiving money can use up to 10 million fairly easily, fairly relaxed rules, but 10 million across 25 communities of various sizes, how do you do that? I was staring down at my phone just now during the meeting because we literally got an email from Bill Buckley at the county at 6:07 p.m. And it says that they have actually finally made a decision, which is the 10 million they're going to disseminate or allow us to use based on 2019 population numbers. So I haven't had a chance to whip out my calculator, maybe Todd has, and know what that would be. But for us, it's most advantageous to have the relaxed set of rules and talk about whatever government services purposes that we might want to utilize this for, rather than a more stringent set of requirements. So that's just literally late breaking news since an hour ago. So as I said, we need to go back to the drawing board and think about it. We had originally planned really focused on water and sewer and stormwater. Those were the sorts of services that would be most appropriate given our needs. Now we can think about it more broadly. We still have, you just heard about water projects. You've talked about stormwater at a recent meeting, and about the proposed new downtown sewer district. So there are certainly those projects to spend money on. I think what our focus is going to need to be is looking at the rules and deciding which projects fall outside of this new rule of 10 million, that we should just focus maybe on water, sewer, and stormwater. And then the balance of the money coming from the county or from our own, what comes directly to us, we can think more broadly about. We already knew we were going to do the website. We have public health costs. We still have some COVID costs, but we can think about road work. We can think about other, I would suggest, one-time or capital expenses that we need to cover, and how we can best deploy those. And it goes as far as police cars and fire trucks. So staff is going to be getting together in the next few weeks and really putting all the options on the table to bring back to all of you a plan that we think makes sense for the town. The nice thing about these funds is the money coming directly to the town doesn't need to be appropriated by town meeting. It basically, we want to get your blessing on it, whatever that is, and then we can go ahead and deploy it. The county money, we do need to go through them, and we'll work with them on whatever those projects are. So I hope that made some kind of sense, what I just said. I'm sure Todd can put a finer point on some of it, or may have some thoughts on things I might have left off.
Just to add to that, for Norfolk, the allocation that we're going to be receiving directly from the federal government is 1.256. And to date, we've received 628,168 in our bank account already. We'll be receiving the second portion of that allotment come June, I believe, which is the next round for the distribution for us personally. Of the 2.3 million that's available to us through the county, they've graciously allocated 2.422% of the $10 million exemption, which equates out to $242,000 that we can utilize up to the revenue replacement. So between the 1.2 and the 242, it's about 1.5 that we can use in any governmental activity spending. So whether, that's like indicated for roads, one-time capital expenditures, sewer, water, what have you, any of those available options are available for approximately about 1.5. That leaves about 2.1 available through the county program. Again, we have to go through county program, which requires us to provide them with a project up front. They approve it. We move forward with the project itself, whether that project is sewer related, water related, or what have you. But that has to go through an approval process that they've already set up a website for us to put those projects in, get in the queue to get approved, and then get the payment process for reimbursement once we get those projects done.
Is there a deadline for when the money needs to be spent by?
2026, I believe, is the deadline for the spending of money. Has to be appropriated in advance of that, but that's the final deadline for reporting purposes.
Committed by FY24, spent by 26. So you can see how this dovetails with some of the water projects we're talking about. And we want, like on those, we're going to want to make sure that we can actually get them planned and spent, because part of what we're seeing, and I see Blair nodding his head, is that you know, the job to have right now is as an engineer planning a project. There's just, you know, we need to get some work done, and the phone isn't getting answered on the other end of some of these companies. And so part of picking what we're going to do is picking what we can get done, because we're not going to want to send a penny back the other way if we can spend it on Norfolk projects.
Thank you. Kevin, do you have any questions?
Not really. You know, one of the benefits of being on the county advisory board has been not only to have a finger on the pulse of the status of the monies and distribution, but also to sit there and kind of look over your shoulder at other towns to see what they're doing with their money, to get an idea of kind of what the trends are like in terms of the projects that are being put out there. So Blythe, I think I would ask you, with the distribution of this final rule, it seems like the overlying theme has been the expansion of uses or the broadening and flexibility of uses. Is there anything as part of this final rule that is a glaring opportunity, something that we may not have been able to do with the previous guidance that we are able to do now that sticks out to you?
Oh yeah, I think it's reconsidering any government purpose that a service that we would be delivering, we can spend it on. You know, from my own point of view, I would think it should be on one-time expenses that, you know, are not a reoccurring thing, because it's going to go away in a couple of years. So buying a piece of equipment or getting something done that we couldn't otherwise address is a huge opportunity. But the only exception I would make to that is we have, you know, formed this public health alliance. We do have some cost for it. It's quite small right now, but that's a cost I would pay for over a couple of years. It gives us time to absorb it into our operating budget fully. But otherwise, as you know, we have quite a robust capital plan that we need to address, and this gives us opportunity to do that.
Perfect, thank you. Last question, Blythe, just to confirm, we have yet to try out the interface or the portal that the county has set up for the submission of applications for money distribution. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I said we were getting ready to think about some of those and at least talk to them about them till the rules changed. So back to the drawing board.
Very good. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Seems like it was a good change for us.
Mm-hmm.
Took the burden of proof off, which is really helpful. Thank you very much. And so I think that moves us on to number 5, town administrator updates.
Couple of things. Our COVID case count as of last Thursday's state report is just shy of 1,800, 1,798. While that seems like a big jump, it doesn't stand out when you look at what had been happening in the state and the country. And if you look at their map, we're still on the low end in our county. And if you look statewide at the trends, as I'm sure you've heard on the news, cases and so on are starting to come down again, which is great news. One thing I do want to point out is that the Health Alliance that we're in with Franklin and Rentham, Franklin has put together a dashboard of their own, showing the data differently than the state does, and they've launched it on their website. I can send you the link tomorrow. They've offered to do the same for us and for Rentham, and we'll put it on our website as well, so that people could just see the data sliced and and diced and shown in different ways, which I think people might really like. And they're just going to take care of it, updating it for us every Friday. So I don't think it's going to replace Tom Gilbert's awesome updates, but it's just another tool in the toolbox. So looking forward to that. A reminder that the annual town meeting warrant is open right now, closes on February 12th. So haven't had any articles hit my desk yet, but I expect they'll be coming in the next 2 weeks. So just a reminder to everyone. And we'll be getting you the budget book in early March. As you know, we're waiting for the school numbers that that are drive a large part of our budget. And Todd and I will be using the ClearGov portal to put together the budget this year. So looking forward to a more robust document than even you had last year. I don't have an exact date we get it, but we're going to be busy working on that. Budgets are coming in as we speak. It's a possibility. The snowstorm we had this weekend, super awesome job. I got to give another shout out to Public Works and then police and fire. You know, our public safety folks, all three legs of the stool did a great job out there. And I'm really thrilled with how wonderfully that came out. Heard from our emergency management director this afternoon that the state's possibly going to be able to receive federal disaster funding for the storm and its impacts. So we're going to be scurrying around doing some math to help support that initiative, because if it's true, then we could receive some money back from what we spent to respond to the storm. Haven't had one of those in a couple of years because we haven't had really bad storms, but it's a possibility. So that's good news, worth doing some math for. And then lastly, just a reminder, the Southwood PIP meeting is this Thursday at 7 o'clock by Zoom. So hope to see lots of people there to keep following up on that project. And those are my updates.
May I ask a COVID question? How many COVID deaths do we have in Norfolk?
You got me on that one. I will look at the portal and email that to you.
I'm sorry, I can look at the portal.
Yeah, I just haven't been following that one. It was maybe 7 the last time I checked, and I'm certainly hopeful it's not more.
Me too, very much so. Thank you, Blythe.
Mhm.
And thank you, just to chime in with Blythe, thank you for the amazing job of snow removal. It was really, Norfolk always does a really nice job, but wow, really, really nice job. Well done.
Thank you very much. It was a lot of hard work.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot of snow, a lot of snow.
Thank you.
And then we have some warrants.
Karen Riley has her hand up.
Yes, sorry, Karen here. I don't mean to butt in, but I just wanted to correct the time for the meeting on Thursday. The public meeting is 6 p.m.
Oh, thank you,
for
Karen.
Southwood. Yes.
Most meetings start at 7, so
I know. I'm making sure everyone knows it's 6.
Oh,
Okay,
that's
thank
great.
you.
Thank you so much.
We
Thank you.
appreciate the correction. Thank you, Karen. And warrants. Kevin, would you want to read the motion?
Absolutely. I move that the board approve 4 warrants for the period of January 18th, 2022 to January 28th, 2022, as printed on the agenda for this meeting.
And I second. And a roll call vote. Anita Mecklenburg, aye.
Kevin Calcutt, aye.
And then there's a motion for approval of the minutes. I'll read this one. There's one set of minutes. I move that the board approve the regular meeting minutes from December 21, 2021.
Second.
Roll call vote. Anita Mecklenburg, aye.
Kevin Calcutt, aye.
And that looks like it.
So
Thank you. Thank you.
Need a motion to adjourn.
Adjourn. So thank you, everybody, for being here. Thanks, Todd. Thank you, everybody. And Kevin, do you want to do the last motion?
I move that we adjourn this meeting of the Norfolk Select Board.
Second. Roll call vote. Anita Mecklenburg, aye.
Kevin Calcutt, aye.
Thank you, Blythe. Thank you, everybody.
Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Right.